What have I done wrong? Why is my child like this? If he were blind or something, and I would know why he was blind, but there's no known cause for autism, there's no known cure. Not at the moment anyway. Hopefully one day they'll find a cure.
Autistic children look just like anyone else. In fact, they're often very attractive children. But autism is a devastating developmental disorder which affects every aspect of the child's personality and functioning. People with autism are severely multiply handicapped, unable to relate to other people or to the world around them. Public knowledge about autism is alarmingly limited. Autism is a rare condition that one is born with, occurring in 1 out of every 2,500 babies. 4 out of every 5 autistic children are male. The cause of autism is not known, but its effects are permanent. Autistic children have just got so many problems, it's a very misleading situation. They look normal and yet they have a huge range of complex problems. They can't make any sense at all of what's going on around them. To them, the world's a confusing, frightening place and they just can't make any head or tail of it at all. Often they can't talk and that becomes really difficult. They can't understand what the situation is. People can't communicate with them and they can't communicate even their most basic wants with other people. So it's a volatile situation and you can imagine that they become terribly frustrated and can be aggressive.
Who wants to see a double somersault? And then the next one.
Lack of communication is one of the major handicaps of autism. Autistic children can't ask for help or tell you if they have a problem. They can't chatter with you about what they've been doing or talk with you about anything. Many autistic people never develop speech. Of those who do speak, while they can repeat what they've heard, often without any understanding at all, they still can't communicate their needs and wants to another person. The problem isn't simply a lack of speech. It is a lack of understanding of communication as a two-way process.
What are you screaming at?
He's not down here.
Oh, he's not screaming at. What are you screaming at?
A second major handicap is the autistic person's obsessiveness and resistance to change. Many autistic people strongly resist any change and spend much of their time in obsessive, meaningless routine. This is because the autistic person has a central processing disorder and cannot process the information that comes to him from his senses, his eyes, ears and so on, so he can't put any meaning to what is going on around him. Consequently, he can't learn from experience, and each new experience or change in activity is so confusing and threatening that he tries to keep order in his world through resisting change and through his obsessive behaviour. Autistic children are obsessive. It's a funny thing, they can't play in anything like a normal or creative way. They don't have creative play. They don't play with dolls, they don't play with cars, they don't play garages, they don't build sandcastles, but they have a lot of obsessive behaviours, so that in the playground you might see a young child flapping a piece of string, and he would do that for hours if you let him. Or you might see a young child trickling sand into the sand pit, but it never changes and it's not play, because through play you learn and play develops, and this is an obsessive behaviour that never changes. And And these children are obsessive in lots of other ways too. For instance, they might always want the environment to stay the same. The furniture in the house never to change, routines always to be the same, might want to wear the same clothes all the time, which you can imagine causes problems at home when you want the child to wear something different. Or they might always want the same food for the same meal at the same time. And that can cause tremendous problems for families who are trying to lead something like a normal life. The most serious handicap of all is the autistic person's inability to relate normally to other people. The autistic child has very little awareness of or interest in other people. This is because the child's capacity to bond to family members, to form friendships and to identify with and relate to other human beings is lacking or absent completely. Autistic children don't play with other children. They can't return the love their parents and family members have for them, and their approaches to other people are simply to get things. Often people, including family members, find it difficult and upsetting to try and relate to autistic children, as they may be ignored totally or cause a tantrum.
No, David, it's a hopeless case.
If he doesn't get the string unwound, what's he going to do? Just a good time to give him to Wendy. Autistic people don't naturally learn social behaviours, so they often behave in unacceptable ways. The autistic person's inability to communicate and to understand others, his inability to form relationships, his obsessiveness and his frequent tantrum behaviour, on top of the severe intellectual handicap which most autistic people also have, mean that he's an incredibly difficult, demanding and exhausting member of his family. I find it terribly hard to look at a young couple with their beautiful young child when they come for assessment and to know what the years ahead are going to hold for that family. That lovely child is autistic, and that means that he's never going to communicate, never going to have any great understanding of the world, he might never speak. He'll never know that his parents are special people to him, even though they love him, they would die for him, but he doesn't have any special feeling for them at all, for them or anyone.
I think the thing that probably was the hardest for me to come to accept, or actually come to realise, was that we had him assessed here. And okay, we heard that he was autistic, we had some books and we read up about it, but it was really the next 2 years that we began an education on what autism really was, because even though we had come here by that stage and we knew we obviously had a very problem child, we didn't realise the reality of what autism was, and it's a living hell.
In having a child diagnosed autistic, I don't really think, or I know we didn't really know what it was all about. Didn't really realise the long-term implications. Up until then, there's a lot of frustration because you don't know what you're doing wrong, and I think we both assumed that we were doing something wrong. We were smacking him and he wasn't understanding, and you know, you're expecting too much of the child. As soon as you discover that there's something different or that he has a problem, well then you adjust your sights accordingly.
The first thing I suppose that we noticed was the rocking, the incessant rocking on the pillow. And that would be anything up to an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours at a time. The erratic sleeping pattern, that just all of a sudden changed. You're being cute.
He's terribly cute actually, isn't he?
Sometimes not so cute.
The big brown eyes took you a long way though.
The screaming, temper tantrums, which would go on and on and on and on, and sometimes all day long.
Normal parenting skills just don't work with these children, and it's terribly difficult for families to lead anything like a normal family life. Parents of autistic children need a great deal of ongoing support, reassurance and practical training to help them to cope with their incredibly difficult and exhausting child.
It's becoming a bigger problem. It's sort of starting to
I think it's
look at
something
it
you
now.
Once children are referred to the Autistic Children's Association of Queensland, a panel of experts carries out a diagnostic assessment. If the young child shows autistic features, the first contact with therapy is through an intensive program involving one or both parents as well as the child. Local and country families are catered for in this way. Parents and therapists working together pinpoint problem areas, and the parents attain some skills in handling their very difficult child. If a longer-term assistance from the association is needed, the child usually moves into an early intervention group at one of the association's therapy centres, where input from educational and developmental therapists and the social worker continue the advances made in the initial intensive program. Of these children, the majority move on to a more normalised educational setting when it is felt they can succeed, supported by the association's integration officer, who acts as a resource to colleagues in other educational facilities. Those children who are unable yet to be integrated because of continuing behavioural and other problems are offered long-term educational therapy and family support either at the main therapy centre at Sunnybank or the smaller therapy units at Mount Crosby, Wavell Heights and Brighton. The whole family group, rather than only the child, is seen as the client. The family is offered ongoing support, consultation, counselling and training in a variety of ways. Respite care at the Albion residence offers a much-needed break to enable parents to regain their energy and spend time with other children in the family, while a small residence at Logan Home provides full-time residential placement for a limited number of young autistic adults. Here, these young people are able to put into practice the practical living skills learned during their years with the therapy centre.
Well, the children join the group roughly at the age of 13, 12 to 13. The way the program is operated in the senior group is to expose them to a number of options which could be pursued as future work options. Areas such as craft, garden maintenance, which perhaps there are more opportunities in for these people. Once you start expanding the area of skills that each of these children has, then you make them less and less dependent on other people.
After leaving the therapy centre at 16 or 18 years, young autistic adults, like other adults in the community, will need a home, a job, recreation and leisure. Unlike other adults, few young autistic adults will live independently. For the rest of their lives, most will need the direct support of their families, and the skills they've learnt at the therapy centre must be maintained by ongoing specialised training, or they will be lost.
He's been at the centre for nearly 11 years now, and when he turns 18, which is next March, unfortunately he can't stay at the autistic centre, which is classed as a school. He's just too old, so he has to go somewhere else because the autistic centre doesn't have facilities for older people, unfortunately. Quite frankly, I don't know where he is going to go. I've called, I think, 12 or 15 different agencies in Brisbane asking if they would possibly have a vacancy for someone like Philippe. I'm hoping that one of the other charities will be able to take him, at least on a part-time basis. If they can't, then he will have to stay at home.
Has David ever shown you that he recognises that you're his parents?
Not in the regards of kisses and cuddles and things like that. That started to happen once he was coming here. We started to get our first cuddle from him, and
is that spontaneous?
Now it is, but it wasn't then. It was learned, but now he looks forward to seeing us.